Hello and welcome back to the latest episode of An American in Thailand, airing every Friday. This program is broadcast from Ratchamakon University of Technology, Peranakan, and it will come to you in two parts. For the first part, I will introduce a certain topic about being an American living here in Thailand. Could be food, travel, culture, anything like that. We'll then take a break, and in the second part of the program, I'll give you a little bit more specifics and examples about that. All right, let's get to the program. Welcome everyone, my name is Gary Gray. I'm an American English teacher here in Thailand, working at Ratchamakon University of Technology, Peranakan, and I have been teaching here for about 8 years, a little more than that. So I think I've been here long enough to kind of understand some of the differences between America and Thailand. I still don't know everything. I'm still learning. I learn new stuff every day when it comes to culture here in Thailand. But I think I have enough of a background now that I can talk about some of the differences. And so that's what this program is about, looking at some of the differences between America. And when I say America, I mean the U.S. Some people get upset when people from the U.S. call it America, because technically there's North America, South America, and that's all America. And that's true. But we do sometimes shorten it to America because it's the United States of America. We're not trying to be obnoxious by calling ourselves Americans. Some people think we are. Some people think that's arrogant and obnoxious. We're not trying to do that. We're just shortening it. So we're talking about the U.S., okay? So we're talking about the differences between the U.S. and Thailand. Now, I will say that in a lot of Western cultures, so in a lot of what is the bigger America, in a lot of America, it's going to be similar to the U.S. anyway. In this case, not so much. Not so much. In this case, the U.S. is not on its own. I think Canada would be kind of similar in this cultural difference that we're going to talk about today. So what are we going to talk about? Okay. It's a little bit of a weird cultural difference because you may not realize it for certain reasons. There are certain reasons why you may not realize it. And the difference is the difference in beauty pageants. And I don't mean how they're done. I mean the general cultural view of them. There's a big difference in beauty pageants between the U.S. and Thailand. And the reason I say it's weird is because it may not be what you expect. And that's because of the history of beauty pageants. It's because of the size of the U.S. So the history and the size comes into this, means that America has a really long tradition of doing well in many of the different beauty pageants. I think the focus there is especially on Miss Universe. Of course, we have our own national one as well. We have Miss America, but then they go on to participate or compete in Miss Universe. I know there are other ones like Miss Grand International, things like that, which I assume the U.S. participates in, but I'm not even sure the U.S. participates in all of the international pageants. I would guess they do. Why not? So the U.S. has a very long tradition of performing well in these pageants. Sometimes they may even get 2 people into the top. How? How is that possible? You only get 1 person from each country. Well, because for some reason, which I don't know why, but for some reason, Puerto Rico is allowed to participate as a separate country. They are not. They are part of the United States. They are not a state. They are a territory, but they are allowed to participate separately. I don't know. I'd have to look at a list of everyone that participates in the in these pageants, but I don't think most territories participate separately outside of the country that they're part of. I'm just not sure. For example, is there a American Samoan entrant? Is there an entrant from Guam? Maybe there is. I don't know. But as far as what little I do know, because I'm not really big into pageants, and we're going to talk about that in just a moment. But as far as I know, mostly territories do not participate. So the United States really gets two shots at this, because you have the winner of Miss America, and then you have Miss Puerto Rico. There shouldn't be a Miss Puerto Rico. That's part of the U.S. So America's done very well in these pageants. And so there's this image that beauty pageants are very popular in the United States. They aren't. And that's the big cultural difference. They aren't. They used to be more popular than they are, but back kind of in the late 70s, early 80s, there was this real push for women's rights. And one of the problems that people view with pageants is, you have the swimsuit competitions, so the women come out in these outfits that don't cover a lot of their body, and so it seems like the women are being looked at sexually and put on display. You're putting them out there on display so we can see their sexy bodies, and it's not viewed as very appropriate among some people in the U.S. culture. And so really these pageants lost a lot of popularity in the late 1970s and early 1980s. They were still somewhat popular, but then it was just kind of like this, kind of effect where, you put a car at the top of a hill and you just roll it down and it just kind of continues going down. And what I mean by that is because it lost some popularity, it wasn't on TV as much. Like right now it's shown on Telemundo TV, which is a Spanish language broadcast channel, so it's not even on a main channel in the U.S. when they show Miss Universe. So now it's harder to find on TV, and so that's going to make people less interested because you can't watch it. You have to go on the internet or something to try to watch it. So it kind of just snowball effect is what we call it. But we don't have snowballs here in Thailand, so I didn't want to use that. I didn't want to use that saying. That's why I used the car rolling down a hill. But it causes it to become less and less and less popular. Even though that kind of movement, the strong movement away from the late 1970s and early 80s, that's kind of over. Not that there's not still a push for women's rights, of course, but the whole anti-pageant movement, because there really was one. There was something like that. I'm a little bit old. I actually remember that through the late 70s, early 80s, maybe even into the mid-80s somewhat. I kind of remember that push against these beauty pageants. All right. So that's the thing that I think might surprise you, is that beauty pageants are not that popular in America. I'm going to give you some examples of that in part 2. Actually, one primary example I'm going to give you in part 2. Whereas here in Thailand, they're much more popular. And you can see all of them. And they're all kind of popular. You have Miss Universe, Miss Grand International, Miss World, Miss Supranational. The only one I'm not that familiar with, and I had to actually look it up, and it's because it's a little bit weird because of why they do it, what it's about, and I believe it has not been around very long either, and that's Miss Earth. Okay? So that's the only one I'm not really that familiar with. Even I know all these other ones, even though I told you I'm not very much into beauty pageants. Because I'm from the U.S., and they're not very popular there. But I know all of these because my partner is into all of these. He's actually from Laos, not Thailand, but similar culture. They have kind of the same feelings there towards the beauty pageants as we have here in Thailand. So they're much more popular here in Thailand. All right, so we're going to take a short break here. When we get back, we'll talk a little bit more about some details and give you some examples of the difference in popularity, all right? So let's go ahead and take a quick break. Welcome back, everyone. Okay, so today we're talking about the cultural differences in beauty pageants between the US and Thailand. And when I say the differences, I do not mean the differences in how they are run, like what is presented. That is actually quite similar. And of course, they have to be similar, right? Because eventually you go on to participate in the international one. For example, Miss Thailand will go to the Miss Universe competition, and Miss America will go to the Miss Universe competition. So they have to kind of have the same. They're going to end up in the same place. So they have to have the same structure, the same things they do. Like they have to answer questions. They have that section. They're all doing the same thing. That's not what I mean. What I mean is how beauty pageants are viewed culturally. So here in Thailand, these pageants are much more ingrained in the culture. And I'll give you some examples of that. For example, many universities, I suspect it's many, because mine does it, so I presume all of the other Ratchamakan branches also do it, which tells me that probably a lot of other universities do it. So many universities, like I said, like my own, Ratchamakan University of Technology Paranakon does this, will have their own pageants. And I think, if I remember, we break it down by faculty. So we will have Miss Liberal Arts. So we will have our own pageants. In the United States, I have never known of a single university to do that. Now, maybe there are some. I don't know. I am not aware of any. That is not a thing that they do. So that I can't say that none do it, because I don't know what every single university in the U.S. does. I will say that it's not common. I've never seen it. I've never heard of it. They certainly didn't do it at my university that I attended. So that's not a thing that they do in the United States. And some of the pageants here in Thailand, and most universities, if they have pageants, will also have a male version of it. And so they'll have, like here, we'll have Miss Liberal Arts, but we'll also have Mr. Liberal Arts. We'll have both. So it's extended to the men as well. So again, I'm showing you these examples of how it's more ingrained in the culture here. You have universities doing it. You have men participating as well. You even have a trans competition here, Miss Tiffany's Universe. Now, I say that as if it's only here in Thailand. No, it's not. There are representatives from a lot of other countries, and they have Miss Queen International for the international competition. So Miss Tiffany's Universe, I believe the winner of that goes to the Miss Queen International, I believe. Again, I'm not big into the pageants, so I'm not sure exactly. But I believe that's the case. So I'm not trying to make it sound as if Thailand is the only one that has this. But in terms of popularity, I have traveled around a lot. I have never heard of a trans beauty competition until I came to Thailand. And then I heard of it several times. I've had some of my own students say that they wanted to compete in Miss Tiffany's. I don't think they ever did, although we did have one of our students participate in I believe it was Miss Grand, and ended up in the top 20. Very nice. We had a student, and in fact, it was a student that came out of our English program. So it's a student I taught. I knew her very well. I taught her in several classes, and she went on to participate in Miss Grand and did very well. We also had another of our students very recently. I don't remember the name of the competition, but it was one of the competitions for men. And see, this is what I'm talking about. We have men involved in these competitions as well, which, again, they might do in America, but I've never heard of it, never seen it. I'm guessing since some of these also have their international versions, that probably America does have participants in that as well, the men's versions, but they're certainly not popular. You don't hear about it. Within that circle of people who are involved in it, I'm sure it's popular. I'm sure the person who wins is very excited to win. But just nationally, the attention they get, you never see anything about it. Whereas here in Thailand, like I said, very ingrained in the culture. So what have we talked about here? We've talked about the universities doing it. We've talked about them having a men's version of a lot of these. We've talked about them having a trans competition as well. It's just, we have all of these. And again, they're going to have most of these in America as well. Well, not at the universities again, but as far as like, they also are involved in the trans competition, I'm sure. I'm sure they have a trans competition in America as well. They may even have some of the male versions. I'm just not aware of it. But as far as how popular they are, they're much more popular here in Thailand. And I'm going to give you an example of that right now. I told you in the first part I'd give you an example of how they're not very popular in the U.S. Now, I don't have the numbers for Thailand because they don't do television ratings. Excuse me. And I know a lot of people just watch it on the internet as well. So it's a little hard to gauge here in Thailand. But I can give you an example of their unpopularity in the U.S. And when I say they're unpopular, I don't mean that nobody watches at all. I mean, you'll hear. I'm going to give you the numbers, and it's going to be in the millions, so people are watching. Just not a lot. Okay, so in the most recent Miss Universe, which is the biggest one in America, Miss Grand, Miss World, all that, not as popular. So the biggest one in America is Miss Universe. And in the last Miss Universe, the ratings for it were 5.2 million viewers. That may sound like a lot. I mean, I think all of Bangkok area has like 6 million people, I think. I could be wrong about that. That's like all of Bangkok watching it practically. Seems like a lot of people. It's not. America is a very large country. It has over 300 million people. So that means only one person in 60 was watching Miss Universe. By comparison, the Super Bowl, which most of you have probably at least heard of, that's the big championship game for American football. We call it American football because football is what most of the rest of the world calls soccer, or what we call soccer. Most of the rest of the world calls football. So we're talking about the American football, the championship game. The American football championship game, the Super Bowl, this year, had 128 million viewers. That is hard to do the math. That is about 25 times more viewers for a football game, American football, for a football game than watched Miss Universe in America. Okay? So it just totally, completely different. So these Miss Universe competitions are not a big deal in America. Again, I don't want to I don't want to denigrate them too much. I mean, the people that are involved in it, I'm sure it's very important to them. 5.2 million people still isn't bad. There aren't going to be 5.2 million people viewing this video, I'm sure. So 5.2 million viewers, still not bad. It's just not... I'm just showing you the difference between Thailand and the U.S. here, where these pageants are very important here in Thailand. Lots of people watch them. I hear about them at school from my students. I hear about them from my partner. My partner's always watching them. People here in Thailand even get like emotionally involved in them, rooting for their person to win. Whether it's the local competition, so they're rooting for someone from their area, or it's the international one and they're rooting for Thailand. I actually saw my Lao partner crying when Laos finally made it into the top 10 or 15, whatever it was, just a couple of years ago, because they never make it. Because Laos is a small country, so there's fewer women to compete, so probably their best woman is not going to be as good as women from other countries, just because the population is smaller. It's always going to be harder for a smaller country to win. So it's tough for countries like Laos. And they made it a few years ago. She didn't win, but she was in the top 5, top 10, top whatever it was. And so I actually saw my partner cry because the Lao contestant made it to the final round. So people actually get emotional here over it. So it's very different between the U.S. and Thailand as far as how these pageants are viewed in culture. And I just think it's very interesting because it's, even though I had visited Thailand several times before I moved here, I didn't notice it on my visits, maybe just because I was doing your normal tourist things. So I didn't even notice this until I moved here. And then I just saw how much people were always watching. Oh, Miss Universe is on tonight. Oh, Miss Grand is on tonight. Oh, Miss World starts on Sunday. And they watch the preliminaries, and my partner, for example, watches all of it. So lots of people watch here. I'm sure not everyone does. Some people are not into that. So there may be some of you out there who think this is crazy. No, Thailand isn't into these pageants as much as you say. Again, it's not going to be everyone. I don't mean that the difference is 100%. It's not as though everyone in Thailand is watching every pageant and nobody in America watches it all. No, that's not true. And it's not like Thailand is alone either. I know, just because I have friends there, I know that in the Philippines, these pageants are also taken very seriously. As I said, my partner's from Laos, and he loves watching these pageants. So there are lots of other countries. I believe in Latin America. I know they always do very well, but I think it's also important to them as well. I think they take them very seriously. So there are lots of countries that take it seriously, like Thailand does. However, the United States is not one of them. And I thought this was an interesting topic because I suspect that most people would think that these are pretty big in the United States, because the United States does well. Well, the United States does well because we have 300 million people. So, like I said, with using Laos as an example, with not having a lot of people, if you have more people to choose from, your top person is probably going to be better than a country that has a half, a third, a tenth as many people to choose from. Not necessarily. Not necessarily. Plenty of other countries have won. Plenty of small countries have won. Thailand has won or come very close a few times. And Thailand, compared to some of these countries, is pretty small. So small countries can win. It's just easier for big countries to win. And the U.S. is one of the biggest countries involved. So they win a lot. They're not winning a lot because we focus so much time and effort on it, and it's so important. It's such a big deal. This is so critical in U.S. culture. No. Again, 5.2 million viewers of Miss Universe in the U.S. 128 million viewers watched the Super Bowl. So it just is not as big of a thing in U.S. culture as it is here in Thailand. And like I said, I just think that's interesting because I think a lot of people would not expect that. They would not know that. So there you go. That is the difference in beauty pageants between Thailand and America as far as their cultural impact and how they are viewed culturally. All right. So that's it for our program. Thank you for joining us for today's episode of An American in Thailand. Let me reach out to any young people out there. If you're getting ready to head off to university in the next year or two, please think about our wonderful university here, RMUTP, Ratchamakan, University of Technology, Peranakan. All right, please stay with us now and tune back in next week for another interesting episode. Also, please don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Thank you.